cheese, butter, flour, and sugar, and you cream it so it forms a nice dough. Separate it out into 4 equal parts, and it's easiest if you shape them into a rectangle, because eventually we're going to roll it out into the shape of a rectangle. Wrap it up in saran wrap, keep it in the fridge overnight, and then take it out when it gets room temperature before you want to roll it. You take the saran wrap off, and we're going to use a generous amount of flour so it doesn't stick to the table. So I'll put some right on here before I flip it onto the table. And flip it out. Peel that saran wrap right off. And then put some more on the other side and all along the table where you're going to roll it out. We don't want it to stick. That is not fun. Then you can put a little bit on your rolling pin and begin to roll. I start in the middle and rock back and forth and try and roll it out as evenly as possible. And if you see it start to stick, just give it a little shimmy. Spread that flour around underneath there. It was pretty tough. It's elastic. It doesn't tear very easily unless it gets too warm. So basically, roll it out to the length that we want the log to be. And then we can start going up and down and make a nice rectangle. If you rub your hand across the dough, you can get a feel for the thickness, where it's too thick and where it's too thin. Over here it feels just right. Up here it's a little thick. So I'm just going to roll it out a little more until I have it where I want it. Maybe a little bit longer. There we go. That's perfect. Next, we'll spread on the apricot preserve. Now with this, less is more. If you put on too much, the dough will get soggy and it'll rip. And that just makes it really hard to work with. So I kind of put some out here. Then I have a pastry brush here, and I just spread a nice thin layer. It's going to work kind of quickly. Again, you don't want the dough to get room temperature because it gets very hard to work with. You see those nice chunks of apricots in there. That's one of the best parts. You want to get a nice, thin, even layer all the way to the end. Even though those don't look as pretty, it tastes just as good. Once we have that on, spread the walnuts. I like to take them by my hand and then just kind of let them drop all over the dough. Again, less is more. It doesn't look like there's a lot, but once you roll it in there, there's plenty in every bite. And there goes my the dog. You don't want your walnuts to be too big because they'll rip the dough if you try and roll it. So that looks good. Then we have some sugar and cinnamon mixture. And you want to sprinkle this evenly across the dough. If you'd rather, you can use a cup measure and sprinkle it like that. I prefer to use my hands. I feel like I can get it out there evenly. And again, with the preserves and the brown sugar cinnamon, if you put too much in, when you bake it, it all comes out. So it can be a little bit of a waste also. And finally, raisins. These I use 2 hands because they get a little sticky. You can throw some flour in there and some of the brown sugar cinnamon, or the cinnamon sugar mixture in there, and it kind of separates them a little bit. I like using my hand. I like to after fasting. That's a great treat to have when you're finished fasting. Okay, so then now we're going to start to roll the Rugelach dough. This is probably the hardest technique. It just takes practice. The more you do it, the easier it gets. So I begin by folding the first all the way down. Just give it a nice little fold and pat it into place. And then I come back and I do it again. Give it a little roll with my thumb and a push with my hand. Roll it and push it so it stays into place. Almost like a typewriter. Really decent when a typewriter is. And then you just keep, now it's getting a little bit thicker, so I can roll it, and as I roll, I kind of give it a little pull and roll it over. A little pull and roll it over. What that does is it makes the roll nice and tight. You don't want it to be too loose, because then when you slice it and bake it, it kind of comes apart. So then we just keep going. I think I'm going to put some more raisins on it. And then you just keep continuing. Give it a little pull and a roll. Pull and a roll. The dough might ripple a little bit, but that's okay. Sometimes little walnut shows through. And I just kind of go back and forth at this point. I use my thumb, push it under, and roll it. Pull it and roll it. And kind of go back and forth. And if I hold this down, at this point, if I hold this down, it won't split. If I kind of went like that, the whole piece will just go with it. So let's hold it into place. So it's easier to pull and roll and make a nice tight log. Then at the end here to seal it, I use just a touch of apricot preserve, and it makes a little glue so the dough will stay shut. And then just roll it right over. You give it a little stretch. And then roll up. Okay, once we have the log all rolled out, you can actually freeze it just like this if you're not ready to use it. Or if you want to use it all right now, just get a little bit of egg and beat it up. And just gently brush your Rugelach dough with the egg. This gives it a nice shine, and it also helps the sugar cinnamon mixture to stick to the top. So give it a nice even coat, and sprinkle it with the cinnamon sugar. Gives it a nice crust on top. Go all the way down, and if you only wanted to use half of it, just egg wash and sprinkle half of it and freeze the other half. Let it come to room temperature, and then brush it with the egg wash and sprinkle it with the sugar cinnamon. Okay, I'm going to cut this in half first just to make it a little easier to work with. And then I cut it into 1.5-inch pieces. Be pretty generous today. Then when you bake the Rugelach, you always want to use either silk hat or parchment paper, because when they bake, the apricot preserve and the brown sugar cinnamon will seep out a little bit, which is fine, but it sticks. It gets very, very sticky, and to do it directly on a sheet pan, it's a nightmare to get it off. So with the silk hat, it's a breeze. You can get those online. And these little end pieces, don't throw them away. Make a nice little snack. Then we bake it at 375 degrees for about 25 minutes. This is what the Rugelach looks like when it comes out of the oven. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email at beth@quintsfinestcookies.com. Good luck!